Greetings, salutations. How we doing, folks?
I did not even hear you enter the voice call. You are so stealthy.
Sneaky like
so I hadn't gotten to this part yet, but I remembered something from last week.
Oh?
And the storyteller already knows what it is that I remembered from last week. So, what did Sophia do last week, right before we ended?
Something.
She started a ritual to open a portal into the afterworld to let them speak with what's her face? Mercy Honor, yeah, that one.
Honor Mercer.
Yeah, Honor Mercer. but there was a reason we did not want to step into the afterworld when her mother decided we should go. Do you remember that reason?
Yep, I remember, which is why I stayed back with Miriam and was not a part of that.
Yeah, but we went to the safe house and we're all at the safe house now where she is doing this ritual about to tear a hole into the other side. If you get where I'm going with this.
Oh, I get where you're going. Yeah, we're leaving the safe house. We are vacating the premises.
Because we're about to be royally fucked. If what I think is going to happen is going to happen.
That's if we step through, though.
Just opening it? Trying to invite things through, you don't see the problem in that. But you smell like werewolf blood.
I mean, I see the problem in that, but I think the specific issue that you're thinking of, which is that once we go we lose ownership of the shelter, I think that's only an issue if we specifically enter the other side. If we stay on this side, we are okay. At least that's my understanding.
So first of all, Sophia does not actually have the capability to rip a hole in the shroud we can go through. And second of all, summon spirit that she was using is a level 1 ritual.
Well, in that case, the entire paranoia is unnecessary and we are all safe.
Yeah.
Now what nobody has decided to do with it is a completely different matter.
No,
but
he's laughing. He's laughing because he knows it's not about us not being able to step through or not. It's about what we're inviting across to the other side. Who's to say we're going to get Honor Mercer?
I mean, yeah, who knows? Maybe this is the third coming of Sylvia.
Well, Sylvia didn't actually completely die, so it's perfectly fine to believe that it is the third coming, although it would actually be more along of the second and a half reemergence.
Technically, this would be the fourth coming of her, because the first coming would be when she was a human and alive, the second when she was reanimated as a vampire, and the third time when she possessed a body.
Indeed. Not problematic at all. Now, to perhaps assuage some fears or maybe add credence to them, so that you all are completely aware, Sophia specifically did not tear the shroud. There is nothing about the ritual that she was potentially enacting to communicate across the boundary. She's making a long distance call in essence. However, and this is the however, she is not the only necromancer nor the only mystic who had raised power this evening. And while, yes, you are miles away from Mommy Dearest and all that might have entailed, we have, in various instances throughout the Chronicle thus far, experienced what happens when you raise power, conduct a ritual, and that power needs a place to go. You have to do something with it. And if, for instance, a ritual being prepared was not enacted and that power had been raised, then anyone smart enough, wily enough, wary enough to siphon, pull, or otherwise use that energies may do so, provided they have the unmitigated gall to do so.
It's a good thing that we don't know anybody who has both the ability and the gall to do so.
The audacity, yes.
Yes, indeed. So I'm taking it that everybody's kept up with where we were last with our lovely coterie. And we are well aware as to where we are, in the basement of a well-appointed Milwaukee condo. Now, unlike Chicago, Milwaukee doesn't have the same architectural history. Though similar, they, for the most part, bent towards the more European ideal. Small, close to the ground. And initially, Milwaukee was not as much of a car fixated urban area. It grew into that over time as the automobile took over America and the world at large. However, a lot of their neighborhoods, a lot of their enclaves have been built so that they were, for the most part, self-sufficient. You had your gas stations, you had your grocery stores, you had your shopping centers, all typically within walking distance of the neighborhood that they served. Now, a lot of that went by the wayside due to, big box theory that was applied throughout the country. The five and dimes being bought out by larger and less caring entities. However, at the heart of most of Milwaukee's older architecture, in the heart of Milwaukee's older neighborhoods, is very much that European ideal of walking or biking to what you need to. So this condo, while well appointed, is still one of those smaller, closer to the earth buildings. Even with all of the modern amenities, the UV shield, the windows on the first and second story, the large screen TVs throughout the building, the computers and modems and all of that, all of those trappings of the modern age are very much a present, along with several other things that are not of the modern age. Ham radios, a full DJ kit, i.e. you have 3 turntables to mix, you have an independent sound system just for it, you have a mic set up. You also have several rooms which have been brocaded in soundproofing technologies. There's the egg crate-esque wall and ceiling tiles that are designed to cushion sound and keep them in that particular area. There are several areas that are lined with sound reductive materials throughout. And it is clear that even with all of that technology and all of that hardware, that DJ Barth is very much one of those initial takers. He's on the cutting edge of as much of as he can be when it has to do with or regards sound, music, talk radio, all of those trappings, which means, yes, there is in fact even a police and a fire scanner that is going on at a very low volume in the background, far enough away to not interfere with his mic, but close enough that at the volume where it's at, he can hear it. So with all of that technology throughout the building, throughout the small-ish space, the basement is another matter entirely. Most people's basements is filled with clutter. It's filled with the cast-off. It's filled with, unless of course it's a living area, but this is clearly not a living area because he hasn't been alive for quite some time. it should be cluttered, should be stacked high. But instead, the floors are clean, earthen, completely so. The walls are not threadbare, but compared to every other facet of the house, completely empty. There's no posters of hip-hop artists or rock stars or musicians or Broadway actors and actresses. There's no memorabilia of any band, producer, local DJ. There's nothing in this basement that signifies that it belongs to the entity through whose home you've all walked through. This could be anywhere in the world. The lighting is surprisingly well done. It's recessed, it's high up and into the actual rafters enough where it shines and keeps everything well lit. There aren't any dark corners. The entire ceiling is lighting. The electrical outlets, they're the typical 2.5 feet from the floor, except for they're all caged. There is copper enclosure around each of them. The floor, being actual earth, hard packed earth, stands out because even in most American basements, even if they don't have an actual full-fledged foundation, they do have a grating, a layer of concrete over the earth. You'd have to break through it typically to get to the earth underneath the home. And while the space is perfectly lit, there has been an eerie feeling welling up this entire time. You've all taken it for granted, partially because you swim in such deep, dark, supernatural waters. You have lived at the shelter long enough where that pressure doesn't cause the hair on your neck to stand on end, where that bump in the night that is constantly present doesn't have you jumping at shadows. You've lived in that darkness and in that depth long enough that you don't notice how rife the area is. That is until the sound of tearing, cloth being torn, not cut, not sliced, torn, that ripping echoes through the ether to you as Sophia completes her ritual. That's where we are, with an illegal number of kindred from Milwaukee are gathered in the basement of one of the prince's voices, one of his hounds, that disparaging title, his hounds of song that carry his message into the streets. One of his foremost, to be exact, hounds, one of his foremost voices. And as several realizations come to you all, that does not escape your understanding. It is illegal in Milwaukee for a certain number of kindred to be found gathered together. It's not inviting trouble. It's throwing a house party where trouble is the main guest. It is the sort of thing that kindred who are looking for an attaboy, who are looking to make a name for themselves, would willingly and gladly snitch. They would gladly drop a dime. They would gladly make sure that it was known far and wide. And on that note, before we dive too much further into our season 17 inaugural episode, I'd like to ask, are there any questions, concerns, hypotheses, or corners we need to round off? That being the case, that welcoming silence I will take, as we are all aware, we are all caught up, we are all in the correct moment to embody these characters that have taken the center stage of our minds and our hearts. And I'd like to extend my thanks. I am proud to have known each of you and the efforts that you put forward in this little hobby of ours. I am thankful for all the time that we have shared and all the energies that you've all placed into these characters and the stories that they inhabit. I am appreciative of every step that we've taken thus far to get here. And without further ado, I'd like to say that this is officially Soup City Sins Season 17, Episode 1, Brothers of Men. When we last left with the sound of tearing echoing across their skin, with the sound of tearing racing through the back of their minds, crawling and clawing up from the depths of that lone, scared humanoid in the dark in prehistory, clinging to the light of the fire if there was one, and otherwise keeping their eyes shut firmly tight for fear of what lays growling out there in the dark, for fear that at the least turn they will be snatched away and never return. Because even without the understanding of the true understanding of self as a conscious idea, now has been all that has mattered or had mattered to that lone figure all of those eons ago. Now was all they had, and now they were hoping to be free of, so that the now that they inhabited was one of bright skies and joy and feelings other than the panic and paranoia creeping along their skin. But as those thoughts bombard and ricochet off the inner workings of our characters' minds, let's begin anti-alphabetical with Sophia. There are certain things that are expected when one conducts business with Powers Infernal. And Powers Infernal being each and every supernatural entity that has ever decided to traipse or interact with humanity. Infernal not in the demonic other aspects, but in the aspects of non-human, non of the natural world. Because despite all of mankind's vanity and vainglory, they are of the natural world. As much as they try to break it, demolish it, master it, or dominate it, they are of the natural world. Kindred and every other supernatural entity is not of this natural world. There are places out there in the wild ether of forever where there's a naturalness to everything. Arcadia for the changeling and the fae, the far dreaming for things that could only be dreamt of, the Umbra for things that don't have physical form and never had physical form, the other side of the shroud, the Oblivion, the Maelstrom for things that had once lived or had come close enough to physicality to envy it. There's a natural world for everything, but this is not that world. This is not that space. There are ways to break those laws and to subvert them. One of which is being able to communicate across the boundary. The other is tearing a hole in that boundary and plundering, like Vikings and pirates and buccaneers of old, simply damning the rules and risking being caught. Because there are protectors of both sides. There are things out there that attempt to keep the border strong. And tears, rips, destructions of that border draw their attention. It also draws the attention of those desperate enough, hopeful enough, that they will get those 5 minutes of flesh, or that 5 minutes of spirit, or that 5 minutes of, well, whatever they hope for. And as you feel the power well up in you, you know that the ritual that you are enacting is a low level one. It's just a phone call. It's just a Skype message. It's just a text. But there's so much more happening. You see the ghostly, phantasmal world around you. You feel it. The lack of color, the chill in the air, the clinging warmth of life that courses and coats the kindred nearest you in their stolen life. You know that there was power welled up. There were things in the offing. And as much as you try to shield, something always gets through. There's always a cost for doing business. And here you are.
So this energy here from the ritual that did not happen at your mother's house, is it a directed energy, or is it just kind of wanton swirling chaos at this point?
It aspires towards chaos, but there's a rhyme and a reason to most things. Just because we see it as a 6 doesn't mean it wasn't created as a 9. And just because it was created as a 9 doesn't mean that we see it as such. We may, have an astigmatism. It looks like an 8. But at the end of it all, just like trees, just like humankind's ethical and moral center, it snaps towards its original purpose, its original goal, its original drives. Like the instincts are still there. So while the energy is wild and can be utilized, can be forced into whatever jello mold of those willing to do so, there was a purpose to it. There was a instinct behind all of that power welled up, waiting for the right seed, waiting for the right colander, waiting for the right funnel to direct it.
Understanding what its original purpose was, is it possible that she can turn it back to its original purpose, but by the intendor rather than the intendees?
That's a good question. Would you so kind to go ahead and roll your thinking on the fly? Would be your wits plus occult or wits plus oblivion, whichever is higher. Your DC is a 3. Your mother is a brilliant politician. Your mother has the mind of Perry Mason and every author written and every main character written by Scott Turow. Your mother has a mind that could make a deal with the devil in her best interest. What your mother is not, however, is a skilled natural practitioner of the arts with which you wield. And yes, there was a purpose behind that power raised, but your mother was vainglorious enough to believe that that power, and she's right, would eventually dissipate if not used. It's that eventual part that always is the undoing of smaller, less skilled practitioners. Because while the hope was that the eventual would happen sooner rather than later, with power such as this tapping into the very third rail of energy, which is the ley lines that lead towards the shelter, eventual, if unused, would give you easily a month of ease of manipulating the shroud, would give you a several quarter years of ability to speak with the dearly departed. The eventual gives you the opportunity to twist the dagger of her planning. And while you can't direct it specifically at her, you don't live in Milwaukee, so who gives a shit what happens here, right?
That checks out.
So knowing you have an angle, with this power amassed, with the one ring, as it were, sitting in the palm of your hand, what is it that you are attempting to do?
Well, if I can't get even for what I walked into here in Milwaukee, what can I use it for exactly? Other than, the thing of fueling shit for the next month, like you said. If I'm going to leave Milwaukee, is that even good at that point?
Well, just like celebrity, it grows less and less the more you're out of the limelight of it. 2 hours away, unless of course you were at one of the natural well springs, such as the shelter, not far from your actual haven. There's several places that your family know of and have used to help direct certain energies. So while not as effective from a distance, every little bit helps. But in the moment, the power raised with the chair in the shroud, with your calling in life and unlife, there's an opportunity to do mass amounts of things. There is an army of the deceased, no longer relevant to this world, across the shroud. And in the same room with you is Blue and all of his motherfucking, can you believe this motherfucking shit? God motherfucking, and on he's going. Though less insistently and less incessantly than he has up until this point. It's now as if you are into Act 5 of a 4-act play. He has achieved whatever it was has attempted to achieve, and yet he's here so as to not draw your attention to what was literally happening, what he was attempting to nudge you into. There are other forces at work.
Well, as she's deciding what she wants to do with this quickly, with a dark gleam in her eyes, she will turn her head slowly to regard Blue with a malicious smile on her lips. Just to see if she can shut him up.
Are you going to direct any of the power towards Blue or to dominate Blue?
Well, I'd not be a proper Rossellini if I didn't hurt him when I had the chance.
That's right. Kick them when they're down. Kick them when they're up. Just kick. What is it that you are attempting to do? Just to shut him up? Or are you going to punish him?
Well, I think that I will just go for an intimidation factor. Might hurt him a little bit just to let him know that I can.
Excellent. That being the case, let me go ahead and give his resistance roll now. You're going to roll your charisma plus oblivion plus 3.
Just contested, no DC.
No DC. High as you possibly can. Of all the unmitigated gall, there was a trembling bit of backbone. There was a small shifting, and for a split second, just for the most minutest fraction of time, you were for the first time ever since knowing of Blue, since seeing him and being near his presence, able to see how he died. Now, the expectation for someone who lived as fast as he did and died even faster was that Blue was the victim of someone else's intentions. No. Those in the room for a brief second watch as a living Blue at the fireworks on 4th of July at Navy Pier is looking at the railing and glances down and sees someone there in the water and leaps over. The cold, cool lake water filling his lungs as bravery, ethical and moral concerns overwhelmed good rational thought. And there's a reason why, for many locals, for many years, Lake Michigan was considered the inland sea. There were many reasons, one of which is the currents are far stronger than anyone would ever think. And as the waves crashed them, Blue and his attempted rescuee against the rocks, and Blue lost consciousness and the water filled him. All things ended. Everything fades away into nothingness, and you're in the room with Blue fuming behind his eyes, even though that ass-kissing, groveling smile is there. Anything and everything to remain as close to life as he possibly can, and you know why. Because life isn't fair. And while many say that death is, it is just the opposite of that. Death doesn't care. It's fairer than life because it wants every living thing to be within its embrace. But there's nothing fair about either life or death. Either end of the spectrum, there is a cruel and vicious cut to it. And the idea of fair is such a human construction. Speaking of human constructions, while not a toreador, Miriam is very much the artist. Through her studies of the human body, there were overlaps with the very idea of art, the very idea of the celestial calculus behind it, the math and science behind art, and all of its variability. The same math that forms the basis of the human form and the human mind, as emotions and everything else. All of those small classes often forgot, taken for the credits to fulfill the base requirements, come pouring back. Because Miriam has been, while her bag is always with her, while her artwork is never too far from mind, for her, this home, this kindred, stands out. Because the upstairs is well lived. You are literally walking through someone's mind and how they think and how they relate to the world. And then this space, this almost holy of spaces, is devoid of everything that connects it. It's almost as if it's a different personality, as if it's a different being than the voice of the person who is standing on the stairwell, still running his mouth, still talking to hundreds, if not more, kindred out there in the dark, with no one close enough to ever know who he actually is. Between that and Sophia's baleful glint to her eye, and the fact that Blue, for the first time, is quiet, and for the first time you were haunted by an image and a vision not of the spirit that has been haunting you all of these months. All of those swirling thoughts and ideas are sitting there on the tip of Miriam's mind.
All right, so to clarify, we can see Blue, and we can see basically his whole episode where he had jumped in the water.
Yes, a fleeting, quick time movie of the death of Lucifer. How he became what he is now, a spirit for hire, a specter in the employ of others, a messenger and a harbinger of untold evils.
She will look towards Sophia, and back to Blue, then to Lucio and Hestia, and back to Blue, and tilt her head. That's not a very pleasant way to go.
Drowning is one of the cruelest ways to go. The only way to make it even more crueler is if someone was purposefully drowning you. It's painful. The lungs fill with fire, crawling out and all but exploding in themselves looking for oxygen. Knowing that that's what Blue's last moments of life were like, knowing where you are, is there any other consideration that Miriam has presently? Knowing what they heard, knowing what they felt, knowing that the boundaries between this world and the next may not be in existence currently.
Not reach to her. But the fruit seems too barren, so she's going to probably pull out her sketchbook and sketch a couple of pieces, just random off-the-cuff things, maybe some anatomy, hearts, lungs, that sort of thing, and just post it to the wall to give it some character.
Excellent. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your, because of speed, let's roll your dexterity and craft really quickly here for me.
Sketching specialty?
Yes.
Have to do that stupid app thing.
Yes, or try the slash die roll for me. See if that works. So yeah, I've twiddled with the permissions, and hopefully that helped. So
You said die roll?
yeah,
One word or two?
it should be slash and then start typing dice, and it should pop up as one of the slash options.
I have a lot of, it looks like Craig options.
Craig. Okay.
I think I had this problem last week where it said I didn't have permission to use that command. I'm wondering if it's the same issue here.
See, I have options for Confession Bot, Craig, Dice Maiden, and Realm of Darkness.
Realm of Darkness. There we go.
Okay. I don't have permission for Realm of Darkness.
How not?
I just see the little icon for it.
That sucks. I'm sorry. All the options are exactly the same for permission. I'm not sure why it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, but yeah, we're gonna have to add. Sorry.
All good. Ta-da! That's 3.
That is fantabulous. That is a complete success. Your initial sketches for anatomy. They combine two of the things that has formed the basis of what Miriam is, which is that at her heart, she's a doctor. Even without the title, even without completing schooling, that's what she had applied herself to. And she, at her heart and at the core of who and what she is still an artist. All of those things in that moment combine. And as she makes it through the quadrants of the heart, where she has the ventricles in their right places, she has all of the connecting arteries in the right place, as the heart takes shape. Not the imagined split open heart that most people believe are symbols of love, which were their own different symbols back in ancient Rome. It starts to beat on the page. The first pulse, she kind of just chalks it up to all of the magic in the air, all of the energy swirling around her, coalescing in and around Sophia, traveling like an electric current between Sophia and Blue. The second and third pulses, as they begin to continue, however, are unmistakable. And then she tears the page free, having just noticed that the heart itself is still very much beating. The lungs are expanding and contracting as if they were breathing, as the muscles twist and shift, as if at the hand, at the end of that invisible, though you didn't make the hand, but the forearm that leads into the bicep is twisting and turning as if it's holding something or flexing the fingers of the hand. They are unmistakable in this moment. Page free in her hand and looking at her well-crafted work and seeing that it is all but alive. It is beating and pulsing and breathing and flexing on the page in front of her very eyes.
Miriam will let out a soft little laugh and hand the page in the direction of Hestia. Is it doing what I think it's doing?
Is it beating to her too, or is it just like a piece of paper?
No, it very much is.
Animated?
Not by me.
That's a little weird.
I don't know. It's just normal now. And she'll pin it up on the wall.
As it's pinned to the wall, and the power is still, and energy is still, and the feeling of home permeates through every breath of this space. Normal is a thing that, well, is at best subjective, though many take it as objective, being right in the middle of things, the high, the low. The average of those two things is the normal. People fail to realize where those ends of that line actually are, because it is in fact a line segment, and it varies from culture to culture, place to place, and people to people. Lucio, however, a lifelong protector, a lifelong stalwart, speaking for those who can't speak for themselves, diving into situations that did take the life of him, considering and holding life as he knew it as precious. Life that he has come to discern like the finest palated gourmet in the world. He's able to read a person's life and know what sort of individual they were based on the taste of their sweet, preserved, or taken blood. And as the power ricochets and bounces and bounds and leaps like an arc through the room, invisible to most eyes, the last taste on his tongue, something wild and strong, and something that he's very much looking to having again, perhaps in a safer moment. But it is, without a shadow of a doubt, beyond reproach. It is an acquired taste for sure. It's too strong and too rich for most, but with his discerning tongue, it is still very much something that he would give someone else's eye tooth to enjoy. And while everyone else is watching the battle of wills between Sophia and Blue, and while Miriam is holding a sketch, several sketches on that piece of page, and getting it tacked onto the wall, he sees the heart beating, he sees the arm flexing, he sees the lungs breathing. He also, unbeknownst to anyone else, sees the shadows that don't exist in this present room. The shadows that the lights above his head have been hurting his eyes ever since they've come on. The shadows which seem to have been protected against in this room take on wild shapes. There's the hackles, something four-legged. There's the slight glimpse of a profile, something long, snouted and canine-like, crawling and slinking along the ground at the edges of view. When he turns to see what that shadow was, there's no shadow there, but he sees them at the corner of his vision, closing and circling like wolves waiting for the fire to damp down just enough to get close enough to pull something or someone screaming into the dark. And he feels a drum beating a dirge just there beneath the non-stop monologue of DJ Barth, just there beneath the now echoing whisper of Sophia's ritual, just there beneath the conversation happening between Miriam and Hestia. There's that dirge, that constant one going on.
I think Lucio's paranoia would prompt him to throw up Oblivion's sight briefly to see if those shadows in the corner of his eye are actually something he should be concerned about.
Excellent. You don't even have to attempt your potential degeneration by rolling for your Oblivion sight or your Wits and Awareness, because they are. You are standing in the eye of Sauron. On one side is the wide width and breadth of everything that had never lived and once had. On the other is the semi-colored real world in which he currently stands. As he casts his gaze around the room, you realize why those lights are there. You understand that those lights can be dialed up another 4 settings. They're there to wash away and keep away those things that are afraid of bright places, things such as yourself, things such as others who have that commonality, things such as all of those many things gathering just there on the opposite side of what you view as the boundary between this world and the next. And the arc of power you see between Sophia and Blue is a bright chain made of infernal shadow stuff. It is the opposite of something easily shaken off. It is the definitive idea of something adamantine. And while that arc of power is strong, hot, and heavy, there are tendrils fading away from Blue's wrists and his ankles, and the, up until this point, barely visible collar around his throat. Those tendrils, which were formerly chains of power, trail off into the distance, rounding hills and valleys that are no longer present in Milwaukee and haven't been for centuries, but still exist on the other side. Those tendrils, they might as well be autographed, because you know where those tendrils lead. Somewhere in that version of the world, somewhere on that side of the shroud, there is your blood sitting on the throne of lies, on the throne of manipulation, gathering an army of all the souls that they managed to crush, control, or dominate through the years. On their right hand, their wife. Not the woman that they married, but the woman that became their wife, their most hated of enemies. And these two heads of evil, these two serpents given flesh, are rousing power. They are using all of the baleful hate in their heart as sword, shield, and branding iron to ensure their army marches on their will and their whim. And they see you. They've always seen you. But now they see you clearer. You and all of your coterie as the real threat and the real power that they should have mastered, instead of playing games, instead of leading you along, building your strength so that they might use it to their own ends. They should have just crushed you. That is a mistake that they will not make again.
Having seen all he cares to, Lucio will end his Oblivion sight and turn his attention to Sophia and the ritual. He won't say anything yet. He doesn't want to distract her, but he's just keeping an eye out for if anything goes awry.
No, that's funny. With the shelter's history and penchant for doing the impossible, by surmounting the insurmountable, by stopping the unstoppable, by moving the immovable, awry has a lesser definition than most would consider. Awry for them is catastrophic and apocalyptic for every other entity. So little small things, like the coming army of lupine spirits, like the attention of an undead emperor and mafioso, like the maelstrom spinning wildly and out of control with all the power raised in this particular location over their head. It is all but unnoticeable to them. It's nothing. It's just a Tuesday night. It's fine. A few drinks with the boys. But what does stick out above all else for Lucio in this moment, he begins to see faces there in the dead. As he turns his sight solely to this world, to this spectrum of existence, there were faces that he almost recognized. And he knows that they're his own ghosts, his own demons, his own unwillingness to give up. He can't stop tilting at certain windmills, after all. And he knows that some of those faces, some of that guilt is actually true. The souls that he was not able to speak for, the girls he wasn't able to save, the missing persons which led to his death, are still there on the other side, still needing to be avenged, still needing justice. And he knows that moments such as this can turn any soul into its antithesis. So being seized, effectively preparing an action. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your wits plus awareness for me, please?
Lovely.
Locked and loaded, primed and powder dry. He is on a very twitchy level of wariness and awareness. So as the boundary between this world and the next becomes more real for him, even without Oblivion sight pulled up, as there is a doorway opening. He is all but ready to leap through and stop whatever it is that might be attempting to come through to do whatever harm it will to them from ever doing anything else ever again. And speaking of doing anything ever again, as Miriam moves to the wall and tacks up her sketch in this space devoid of all semblance of life, save the kindred gathered here and the ritual in the offing, the power brushing against Hestia's skin is like going to bed underneath a weighted blanket. It's soothing, it's calming. She has spent the entirety of her death, the entirety of her immortality, awash and bathed in energies that meet this level and rise above it. This is all goodness. This is all... it's been so long. Calgon, take you away. Even with the weird residual energies that bombard and transform Miriam's sketch, even with having glimpsed the fall of blue, and even with hearing the constant non-stop prattling of DJ Barth on the stairwell, with Tessa and Anton waiting expectantly to speak with their dearly departed friend, Hestia's more at home than she has been for the last few weeks. Hestia is more at ease than she has been for the last few months. So much so that when she feels the hand on her shoulder, she doesn't jump. She's not surprised. There's a comforting sigh as she hears, "Hey, baby girl."
So, it's true then.
You know the saying, everything's true, especially the lies.
An absolute fool, you know that.
Yeah, well, I think I achieved my goal. That is awesome.
Was it worth it?
You're still kicking, so I think so.
What kind of life is this?
It was never supposed to be life. It's supposed to be better.
You know I'm gonna be lost without you, right?
Not as much as you think.
How little you think you meant to me. I swear, I don't understand. But
I'd like to think that I meant just enough for you to keep you moving one foot in front of the other.
almost too much, because I almost threw it all away and came to rescue you.
That would have been a fine fight.
Yeah.
But I'm happier knowing that you are still there.
So what does Karen have to say about all this?
That's a good question. She really doesn't do all that much talking. She's someone who lives more in her mind, I suppose.
Sounds about right.
And just because my fight there is over, doesn't mean that I stop fighting. There's a whole entire world of beings that need to be put right.
Yeah, I'm aware. There's one that's making so much fucking trouble right now.
You mean Emperor Castiglione? Yeah, we're not done tangling. In fact, the reason why I was drawn here is because he has several layers of those bound to him, keeping a watch on you. He has several layers of those bound to him, trailing you as best they can, keeping track of your flight through the air. The only time that gives him pause is whatever happens during the day. Surprising how even on this side of things, I'm still denied the daylight hours.
Oh, that's depressing. I was hoping to see the sun again someday, and not in the most of an ironic a way, so don't give me that. Yeah, so what do we do about it?
There's only one thing to do about it. Keep doing what we're doing as long as the plan holds true. Take everything we can from them and keep them from gaining more.
You know, I got to meet the old man, right? He's not really dead. He likes to pretend to be, though.
Nothing is ever as easy as it seems, nor as difficult as we imagine. I just came to warn you.
Yeah.
You've got dragons in the south. You've got dragons in the north. But your best bet lies with building strong walls and weathering the storm.
So the dragon we went and visited, we can't really count on him, I'm guessing.
Decibel is a man of his word.
And then it suits him.
The reason why he doesn't give it lightly, because even if it doesn't, he will keep the letter of his word.
Fair enough. Well, at least now they have one less thing they can take from me. A certain wise man told me, don't have anything you care about because they can use it against you, so you are one less thing they can use against me.
I didn't give myself to keep from being used against you. I gave myself to buy you time so that Vivi wouldn't be. She is currently at the Chantry. She is currently in their care and being experimented on. It is the best that I can do to buy her an attempt at life. There's opportunity for her to be purchased. There's opportunity to forestall the eventual. Eventually, they will test her vitae. Eventually, all deals will be off because you broke the traditions while you were still bound to them. And that is a loophole with the contract. And your enemies on the Primogen will use that.
It would behoove us to get her back ASAP. Got it. So, is this goodbye for good, or?
Nothing's for good. Nothing's forever.
So much for immortality, right? the farce that is on life, I guess. Okay. I know what we have to do.
Well, at least that makes one of us. I'll be seeing.
Yeah. And the whole time she was talking to him, she wouldn't turn around.
There is a weight to the presence of those that we care about. There's a weight to the presence of those who share our lives. There's a feel that they have in our minds. And while for those unable to see spirits and specters, for those not willing to plumb the depths of what they can notice in this moment, there is an added feel to the energy bombarding and bouncing off the walls around you that dissipates as a aperture, a doorway into the middle of nothing begins to tear itself halfway between where Sophia is standing and where Blue is. There is a roughly 6.5 by 3 foot space being outlined in black light, somehow radiating enough light that you all are able to see it in the normal visual spectrum, slowly opening up. The cracks where that darkly glittering, glimmering energy is wafting grows wider and wider. And so, what is everyone doing? So you effectively have a bonus die of 3 to whatever it is you choose to do.
Was this a question for everyone or someone specific?
Everyone.
At the present moment, I can't think of anything that Lucio can do specifically other than just be ready for the worst and hope for the best. As many things are weighing on his mind, there's nothing he can do immediately to solve any of them or even work towards them. So right now he's just gotta focus on what's happening right now.
Question. Conversation that was had between her and Joe, was that privy to everybody, or was it just something she heard in her mind's eye?
She was speaking out loud, but it was heard solely by her. So it was easily hearing one half of the conversation.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I don't know what other people would be thinking, only hearing one half of it, but... Okay, so knowing what she kind of knows, she's looking for her blade at her waist, and she looks to Sophia. I don't know what you're planning, but we might want to close that and quick, because he's using Blue to track back here and can open the other side up, as well as the Lupine's spirits that we were dealing with before. They can make it through. Even though you didn't tear it, they can tear it.
So, being far outside the rules here, I'm not sure what Sophia can or can't do. What she might like to do is crack those shackles on Blue like a whip or a fuse or something, either using him as the spark or freeing him from it, one of the two, preferably freeing him, because he could be a good asset if he was broken free from his infernal master.
Well, it would be a contested role, but you already have enough energy here where that contest is literally as long as you don't fail. The shackles that tied him or bound him to the Castigliones is all but whispers and wisp at this point, just by the blinding sheer energy being directed at him at your control. The doorway, however, is another matter entirely, because you realize that that's exactly what it is. The magics here, currently swirling around you, are very much in line with the same magics that the Paters use to communicate. Very much in line with what a member of the higher echelons of the families might utilize to communicate.
Well, that will make me a little less nervous about it then, so I won't have to divide my attention so much. Plus, she's kind of realizing this is something the Castigliones are doing. If she burns Blue out or liberates Blue, that should break some of the contact. So,
there is a feeling, there's a presence that comes with Oblivion. They're just calling it what it is, just the necromantic aspects of delving into the heart and soul of what death actually is, the balance of life, the dark multiverse that is the many worlds beyond this one, if you will. That feeling, however, carries his own feeling, carries his own stench, carries his own weight. And it's one that is unmistakable. You know it as like mother's milk, because in learning it and being awash in it and living with it, there is a certain expectation, certain comfort. There's the reason why Sophia isn't nearly as worried as someone who is holding on to a nuclear bomb should be. You're holding on to a grenade with a timer, and it will wash over the landscape around you. It will bathe everything in its radioactivity, and you're comfortable with that. And as a doorway opens, it is all that you can do to not just let go of the firing pin on that grenade. It is all that you can do to not let that energy be your calling card and cow anything and everyone that may be walking through it. If nothing, it would at least bring you fully into the respect as not a peer or an equal, but as a potential contender or a potential groomed individual for the position of Pater. And unlike the empty-headed, mindless Zal, who was locked up and fallen into success, you would have a plan. You would be a glorious leader of the Hakata of the Chicagoland area. You could direct all of those energies and all of those machinations towards a goal that would better not only yourself but the world around you for the family. And as those thoughts are rolling past you, and as Lucio is all but Wolverined up, ready to make his presence known in the defense of the coterie, and as Miriam comes to grips with, in existing in this paradigm with these individuals, with these kindred, that there is power to spare that is charging everything, including her, opening other aspects and avenues to the world in which they exist. And Hestia realizes that power undirected is just as catastrophic as not having any power. If you all would take a quick gander at where I'm going to put that. We'll put that in the open play. This young lady steps forward, steps out of the doorway, dressed in a dark blue pinstripe two-piece. Her shoes are surprisingly not stiletto heels. They're not Manolo Blahniks or Gucci or Prada, but they are well-appointed, practical footwear that does not detract from the fact that she's wearing a power suit and a bright white open-collared shirt. Her gun in her hand is all but an afterthought. The fact that she's able to step fully into this space because you hear the clack of her shoes on the hard packed dirt beneath your feet, and she very clearly appraises each and every one of you, save Sophia, before she nods her head as if you all add up to exactly what she was expecting. And she looks towards Sophia, holstering her sidearm.
Sophia will hold one finger up to her and finish what she's doing because she doesn't want to let the energy go all chaotic again.
She stands at what looks like parade rest. There is no other way to place it. There is a bearing that says that even while not actively in the midst of doing a thing, that she is prepared to do whatever harm is necessary. And just as the doorway slowly seems closed behind her, there is a brief image of a gentleman that could be Lucio's tanner, thinner, older self. He has a mustache that Lucio recognizes as being part of his father's face, though not his father. Not his biological sperm donor, but his father, the gentleman who raised him. And while there is a similarity in image between the two gentlemen, there is a hatefulness to the other person as the scene closes into nothingness. And the power being directed at Blue, sundering the shackles that tie him to the Castigliones. There is a theory and a practice of exchange. There is a cost that must be paid. There must be an equivalent, like for like. It's often used in via effigy. Is that what Sophia dares to do? Does she chain Blue? Does she leash Blue with the same force that she is dispelling? Or does she risk leaving him free to his whim and his wills?
That's a tough one. Well, so she doesn't have much time to decide. She is actually going to not go with her instincts, and she is going to leave him free on the assumption that he's not going to go running back. And also under the assumption that she can bind him later if she wants to.
Back during the blaxploitation period of our country, of our nation, of the world, there was often a saying that a hero ain't nothing but a sandwich, and that free ain't free. There's no better proof of that than as Lucio is brimming with strength unleashed, there's a coolness in his left hand. There is a cold, so startling as it nearly makes him jump. It's almost as if he's holding on to a frozen stone or a pure sliver of ice.
If that takes, you can owe me one. I did not shackle you to myself on purpose.
What the... And before fuck is actually stated, Blue is no longer in that well-fitted coat of many colors. He is no longer in a monochromatic, various rainbow of blues of a modern cut. He is once more in the regalia of the long blue coat he was wearing when he died. The same long blue coat that he had worn when helping Lucio and Alex escape the demons and spirits at USC, at Schroeder Hospital. He is back with his hair coiffed as it was, well appointed as it was. Slight little drip, the moist, wet look of all the product that he had in his hair. The hat that he rarely wore or rarely wears, once more atop his head, canted backward so that his curls are easily seen. His shirt, the collar, suddenly growing several inches longer than it had been. And his pants, no longer the tailored modern cut, but the wide-legged bell-bottoms he had been wearing. And instead of the tasteful, well-appointed Italian loafer, it is back to the demi-boot that he was wearing when he died. Those blue alligator boots. And the rings and jewelry that had seemed all too gaudy his first few moments with Lucio, suddenly back. And his chest hair, no longer waxed and well maintained, back to its unruly self. And for the first time in several months since his sacrifice in the attempt to save members of the coterie from the horrors of Chinatown, Blue looks exactly as he once did. All of the excess power and energy granted him by the Castigliones gone.
So keeping her eye on Blue, she will simply say, Vittoria, it's been a long time. And she will continue trying to pull forth this Honor Mercer person.
That's the beauty of power. It's its own trap. It leads you into corners and places that you probably shouldn't. And this power is no different. The long distance call across the veil was just that. However, with the power present, with all of the energy that is still residually ricocheting to, fro, and once more back again, the call opens up the wall behind Victoria. You all know that it's not actually opening and that you are able to see where this power connects to. You're in a church, or more specifically a church basement. Sitting on a pew back to you is the ginger-haired head of Honor Mercer. And as Honor turns, looking over her shoulder into the nothingness that's behind her, to the stairwell that leads up into the church, she catches Father Soros's attention. Honor, is something wrong with tonight's sermon? Oh, no, Father. I felt something. I felt as if someone touched me. That's impossible, dear. You're not quite to that gate yet. You don't have to worry over spirits or anything else touching you just yet. But to move through the gate of passion, you must first be deprived of a child. And while I would love to help you cross that threshold. You're not quite ready yet. There is several more understandings that you need to grasp, to take into yourself before we may move through the third gate for you. Now, please, attention forward. Yes, Father. Yes, of course. And then the sermon goes on. Father Soros teaching at what effectively is a catechism. It's teaching, but there's no catechism that you've all incidentally may have absorbed over the years. There's no basis in the Bible or any version of which the Catholic Church uses, or any of their cults, because that's what they all are. Various branches and aspects, little secret enclaves within the whole of the Roman Universal Empire that is the Catholic Church. No, this is a hodgepodge of, there's some mudras mixed in, there's some koans, and there's some Buddhist dharmas, and there's all sorts of things that don't seem Catholic in the sermon and the message being taught. And this nonsense about gates, that's not part of any gospel or scripture you've all ever heard before. And then the most startling fact of it all, the mystery that is no mystery, but takes a moment for you all to really grasp, to make sense of. Standing in the corners, barely occluded by the shadows that cling to them, are snake-headed entities, bipedal, fingers long and sinewy, some of them looking quite moist. And while they have hoodies and hooded cloaks about them, nothing is obfuscating or hiding the fact that they are clearly some scientist, some creature from the Isle of Dr. Moreau. And yet, none of the persons sitting near Honor or Coach Father Soros standing at the pulpit speaking seem to give one care about, even as they are occasionally flick their gazes towards those serpent-like entities.
Are the other two here with us, the Tess and whatever the other guy's name was?
Anton, their faces are split open with shock and surprise. And Tessa frowns and begins moving close, even ignoring Victoria, trying to get a better view on where in the afterlife that is. But here's the thing, and you haven't told anyone. That's not the spirit world. That is not anywhere in the land of the dead. It is not anywhere in the dreaming, nor the halls of Arcadia. That's a church basement somewhere in some city, close enough to be affected by the energies of the ley lines that connect here, far enough away where it required such an outpouring of energy you can feel it leaking from the room you're currently in. And then there's Lucio staring into his hand at the $50 50-cent piece sitting in the palm of his hand that seems covered in melting ice.
Is this the same coin that
Yes.
Blue gave him? Okay. Now, previously when he was interacting with Blue and he had the coin, did it feel hot when he was interacting with him or cold?
It felt cooler. You can tell how close he was by the coolness of the coin. It only grew warm when he was no longer around.
Lucio is unsure what exactly to make of this. Is Blue still in the room?
He is. He is looking at his ensembles, and you can tell that for him it is not just an ensemble. You can tell that he's feeling the different cloth. What he was has somehow been changed several times. And the chains binding him and oathing him, being relinquished. It would be akin to you stepping out into the noonday sun and not being burned. It would be akin to you doing the impossible. It is that feeling that is clearly washing over the spirit that he is once again.
Lucio's gonna move closer to him and try to strike up a conversation by simply asking, what happened to you?
I died, motherfucker, 3 times now, and it just won't. Oh my, the fuck? What did you do? How? They said it was impossible. I was bound to them forever, and and you can tell that he's trying to do something. Whatever it is that he was attempting to do or trying to do doesn't work, and that's the most telling thing. Because it was clear that he had grown accustomed to doing whatever it was that he's attempting to do. It's like suddenly no longer being able to use your hand. It's akin to realizing that you will never see the same way ever again. It's a moment where, not for the first time have you witnessed personal horror, personal realizations be a shattering, but watching it happen to a spirit is another matter entirely, because all they are their feelings on the matter, not their thoughts, their passions or lack thereof keep them close enough to the real world to be affected by it, keep them fettered. And watching as those feelings bombard and assail him, you are able to see how devastating emotional warfare is. You're able to see all of the effects of being totally crushed, to be obliterated, to be made nothing by your own feelings. That self-talk that most are able to muscle past or to tune out just enough to continue with their day. For a spirit, that negative self-talk can destroy them. And you watch as bits and pieces of him begin to lose integrity. You can see tears beginning to well up. The power he had granted to him, though it was still power. Now the absence of that, the high of that power is gone.
And Lucio responds to him just saying, well, you can add that to the list of lies that they've been telling.
They didn't sacrifice me for a friend. I thought we were friends. I saved you, you saved me, and then you let me. And as he doesn't say it, you can tell that he's still feeling it. You get a brief glittering glimpse of a Asiatic male managing to shackle him and chain him and begin to drain him as you would a victim. Fangs sinking in, arms pulling and holding the victim close, except for Blue's a spirit. That shouldn't be possible, yet it was. And instead of the kiss, it's almost the antithesis of it. You're seeing the look on Blue's face that the cemetery worker had the moment Sophia bit down that I will do anything and everything to not be here. That horror, as if liquid fire was poured into his veins. You see that look taking over Blue. You see that moment of him watching as you all escape without him. You see that moment of, instead of him being swallowed whole and drunken down, no, worse. He was addicted to the pain instantaneously. He was made to serve and distilled down into a plum wine. And he had to watch it happen. It's almost as if being eaten by cannibals, but kept alive enough to watch them enjoy the taste of you. And speaking of the taste of you, as Lucio is able to tap into Blue and keep Blue there, fettered though he is to the coin, that symbol of their agreement, that symbol of their contract, Victoria stands at parade rest, ready to move at a moment's notice, it seems. And DJ Barth is still talking, but he is torn between running upstairs and clearly locking you all down here and staying close enough to figure out what's happening, to find out what's happening. While Tessa stares into the wall where honor and the sermon is still going on. Anton has taken a few steps closer and he is transfixed, his hand reaching out, almost as if testing to see if he could reach across the boundaries and get Honor's attention. And every few seconds you catch her looking over her shoulder towards the space where you all are but are not. And the soundtrack to this moment is the beating heart on the wall. The dum-dum, 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 of the lungs and the rubber band-like stretching of tendons and muscles.
Sophia will attempt to break contact at this point once she realizes that this is not at all where she thought she was going.
Some things are easier done than said. This is not one of them. DJ Barth's home, while not directly at the center of the ley line, is close enough that the energy raised reaches from where you all are to that other end of that call. And while there's nothing immediately in that room, in that basement, that seems to be connective to where you are and what you are, one of the snake-headed individuals, one of the serpentine-looking bipedal forms in the shadows just over the left shoulder of Father Soros, begins moving closer to Honor, but he's not looking at her. And he, simply because you can't describe it as sexuality one way or the other, so you assume that it's a male. There's no distinguishing mammalian features to discern one from the next. And they come closer to Honor, except for they're not looking at Honor. They're looking at the space over her, staring right into where you're standing, Sophia. And he's moving closer, foot by foot, step by step, inch by inch, moving slowly as if he's trying to sneak up on prey. Would you be so kind as to go ahead and roll your stamina plus oblivion? No need for him to even bother rolling, because there's no way, even with a critical success, could he beat that. That being the case, just as he gets close enough to potentially leap across that boundary between the two, the connection is cut. Almost as the phone was slammed down on someone yelling on the other side of the phone. Immediately over, crashing close with a clear final sound of metal on metal colliding. And Tessa, like a puppet with strings cut, falls to her knees. Anton moves to offer succor and share in that grief, to take his more than fair share burden of it all. And DJ Barth is attempting to put one and one together to get something that resembles a number instead of the Z that he keeps coming up with. And Hestia standing there 3/4 of the ways away from where the doorway shut, watching that grief on Regent Green's face, watching the maté-tinged tears slide across their cheeks, watching as Anton offers succor, feeling that weight in and of themselves. And Miriam, the heart still beating. It's only as the rhythm becomes clear over this moment, between all of the lights and sound of everything that's happening, that you realize you know whose heartbeat that is. You realize how strong it is, and its signature feel that you know without ever having had in your hands, but hearing it constantly, feeling it close enough that you could play it if you wanted to. And on that note, it is 26 after the hour. Let's take a quick 10 minutes and be back here at 36 after.
Okay.
All right, guys. Sorry about the delay. How we doing?
Oh, just surviving.
I'm back.
Living the dream.
See, I thought I was the one late coming back. I was about to tell y'all I was held at claw point for not putting food in the bowl before I came to sit down. So.
Now, you know that's a faux pas that you need to correct. You need that food, and it needs to be the wet kind, not the dry kibble. We don't do that. So,
Sophia had the same issue. Our cat climbed up on the printer, and as he walked out here, she screamed at him. Instead of screaming at the person who's actually in the room with the bowl.
well, yeah, clearly you're busy. And if they're up walking around, there's, you got hands you can feed, or you can pet, or whatever else they decide you need to do at that moment. So speaking of that moment, when we last left, the weight of the moment is circling around connections with the past, connections with those cherished things, or those things or people and persons and spirits and essences that have connected with us. In that moment, the reality is that everything is as it is, but also never what it seems, is very, very apparent. Because while that pregnant, paranoid pause of the walls closing in is still there, there hasn't been the other shoe drop. There hasn't been any doors burst open, spewing forth hairy, violent engines of destruction. There hasn't been an overwhelming onslaught of the dead. There hasn't been anything physical happening. But it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to realize that whatever that serpentine thing was, it knew you all were there. In whatever realm you all pierced, it knew you were there.
Sophia will stand up and lick any residual traces of blood off her hands there, and she will look at Tessa and say, "I'm sorry. I am afraid that I cannot enable you to speak with her. But I hope the information that I'm about to give you will suffice in its place."
But where was that?
That
what
was
hell
not the,
was that?
That was not the Deadlands. That was not any spiritual realm that I am familiar with. Felt very much like it was here in Milwaukee.
That's impossible. If those things were here, we'd know. The newbie prowl the streets. It is this very moment. And she looks at all of you all. With this many kindred here, we are in violation of Prince Decker's laws. This is enough to have the world explode around us. It is only because we are... And she looks at DJ Barth, who has already moved 2 steps further up the stairs, closer to the door. It is only because we are here that we are not under attack. It is only because of what he means to Prince Decker that we aren't being dragged in front of the judges. I'm sure even with all of that because they are busy elsewhere right now, that is the only reason why we aren't being staked, or worse.
Sometimes monsters hide in plain sight. They think that our kind knows all too well.
Point of order. I will get back to my other questions in a minute, but I'm just going to point out one thing. You said that wasn't in the Deadlands. Okay, I get that part. But because I know ley lines like I do, the energy that was raised tonight, it might not be here in Milwaukee per se. It might be somewhere that connects to Milwaukee by a ley line, and specifically this point. The magic that she points to Sophia, the other raised and then you used, and then that one, and then she's pointing to Victoria, then to the newcomer, she's like, and that one just came through. That all amplified the ley lines or fed off or looped into the ley lines, allowing it to connect to wherever that was. So I do believe, yes, it was not in the Deadlands, that wherever that was, and that's creepy enough, mind you. But two, it doesn't have to be here in Milwaukee. It could be close enough for the magic to connect to by the ley line, because the ley line is like a telephone line, which I'm sure you understood. But my thing is, and the thing that worries me is that thing, whatever the fuck that was, knew that we were here. It was staring right at to where you were or where we were. And I don't want to know what the fuck that was up close in person. We already have enough problem with the loop lines. Whatever the fuck that was, don't want no parts of it. It was like in some kind of weird church, it seemed like. So, does anybody have any ideas where there's like a weird church or where there's serpent people?
Well, it ain't New Jersey.
Do not think that is a thing you can find on the Yellow Pages.
I mean, come on, okay. So I know the crazy fucking rumors about LA and lizard people and all that other shit, but it's true? For real? For reals. It's true.
Didn't you mention earlier her being involved with the Setites?
Yeah.
Oh.
I think the important takeaway from this, however, is I do not believe that she is dead.
She looks at Anton. Didn't you say something about a church? Well, she is a church, so yeah. Lizard church. Weird lizard church. But I guess she seems kind of calm and happy there. So, maybe we should leave her where she at.
The moment that he mentioned a church. And the moment you mentioned Setites, it literally is lightning flashing behind their eyes, as if a new dawn has risen, as if the shadows of their pain has granted the idea of hope even more weight with them. But that also raises other issues. Something unsaid, because they operated and were operating under someone else's say. They were operating under the grief from what they had been told by something and someone they trust. Which opens up a world of possibilities. And it's clear that for all of those possibilities, they would prefer it not to be.
I assume that a revelation would make us even, yes?
Yes. Yes, we are even. Though I have no way except for keeping my word that you'll be safe here to repay you for all of this. And she, in righting herself and becoming once more the regent of Milwaukee, pushes gently Anton away from her. The succor of his presence no longer needed. In fact, if you all didn't know any better, you would be clear and sure that it was a tantamount to a declaration of war that she was preparing for. That she was right before your eyes, girding herself in armor and sealing down her cuirass and making sure that her steed was ready to ride and all of the preparations that you would make when charging onto a battlefield. Right before your eyes, she becomes something and someone else. Someone who, for lack of a better word, for lack of a better point of reference, is to be feared. Gone is the dancing kindred, having given themselves over to passion. Gone is the grieving person at a loss. In its place is the mistress of known magic in Milwaukee. In its place is someone you are sure would burn down the very world around themselves so long as they are sure their enemy was there dancing in the ashes with them. That old twist of a phrase, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. In this moment, very much looks like we'll burn that bridge while we're standing on it. She smooths her clothes, rises from where she'd fallen to her knees. She doesn't do anything as obvious or grandiose as rolling her shoulders or stretching any muscles that no longer need use. Instead, she goes calm. And there's a stillness settling over her that's palpable. So I assure you that y'all's gonna be safe here tonight. You have a way out of the city tomorrow. And I will ensure that Barth, and she looks directly at him as he's halfway to taking another backward step up the steps leading onto the first floor, will make sure that no one disturbs you all. This place is safe from most detection. This place is safe from most. And those that it is not safe from, I will run interference for until you all are no longer a concern of myself or this city. Enjoy your rest and your visit back home. And she begins moving towards Barth. Anton frowns, looking from her, leaving, to you all, to Victoria, and then back. Well, you guys heard the lady. I will be leaving because I don't think she wants me to be around much longer. Guess I'm gonna have to pay for that too. Thank you.
Thank you. You've been very kind.
And then he moves towards the door, following her up the steps behind Barth. And while the door closes...
Hey,
Yes?
before you go,
Yeah?
one Tremere to another Tremere admirer. Don't get on her bad side no more. It's not no way to get back in her heart. Try flowers or chocolates. Works way better than pissing her off. That's it.
She don't like flowers.
Knives. Knives are always good.
And he slips out the door. You can hear the latch click into place. All that remains in the space besides the light is the beating of the heart on the wall. His rhythm deep and strong, surprisingly for a paper-thin sheet of magic coalesced. The sound of lungs breathing in and out. No wheeze of age, no wheeze of infirmity. Strong, healthy lungs. You need lungs of someone who was physically active, with such a high rate of activity that their resting heart rate would be akin to being dead. And the muscles in those arms flexing and stretching, so much so that you can hear them like rubber bands being pulled to their limit and relaxed, and then pulled and relaxed. As you four not counting Blue, who has been stunned into silence with the lack of whatever power he was attempting to call on. What is it that you all are doing with the last few moments of your night?
Sophia will regard our visitor and say, my apologies, dearest Vittoria. Why have you come here?
Your father wanted to foil your mother.
Our father, you mean?
I'm not his favorite. Otherwise, I'd be in your place.
It was not my choosing.
No, but it was his support, your mother's support, several others you've managed to win over, and all of your successes through Europe. You're almost success in Canada. And let's not talk about your episode in Sao Paulo. And she swallows. It's been such a long time, and such a short time since Silvio. So, she has not been as she is nearly as long. So the affectations of death don't come quite as easy to her as they did to Silvio. And so there are still certain affectations, so much busy movement in the living that it's like watching someone with an itch that they can't quite reach. The little tells, the small tick at the corner of the jaw, the slight flicking of the gaze around the room, and those little small telltale signs that she is in fact 100% alive. I am yours. Your father believes that you are going to either be successful or that your death and mine will be a proper punishment against your mother.
It is an interesting tactic, but I will be glad to have you, I guess, by my side, as it were.
Yes. Would you like me to secure the door and ensure the others don't have access to... And she looks at the other three. Well, those upstairs don't have access to you all while you rest for the day.
I feel we have struck an honorable accord, but I would not have gotten this far if I fully trusted another of our kind.
Very well. I have been given, and she reaches inside her breast pocket and moves to you. There is a roughly 2 1/4 inch wide by 4.5 inch long and a 1/4 inch thick piece of plastic in her hand. It's only as she gets closer that you realize that it is in fact a phone. It is one of the smaller phones that you have seen, especially being as it actually does have a very small keyboard. And she hands it to you. This is from your father. It is a way to communicate with his associates and himself. It has all of the information from our network of slaves at your disposal. Now, the funny thing is, they use slaves instead of ghouls. They use thrall if they're being polite. But in their common, amongst themselves talk, all ghouls are just blood slaves. So the idea that there's a network of ghouls at your beck and disposal, or at least with you having access to them, is curious. Because as far as you remember, your father was very much one of the few against bonding an entire family for generations. He was very much against the idea of ghouls, unless, of course, absolutely trustworthy and proven as such. So he didn't want to raise families of them. He didn't want to experiment with their blood until they were bound to you through all time. He believed there was a reward, and they should earn it.
She will take the phone that has been given her. She will fish out the phone that she's been carrying, which was Silvio's phone. She will start to hand it to Vittoria and then pull it back and say, "This is very dear to me. Do not lose it, but you will find it useful."
I would never. And she slips it into her pocket. You are sure that when you die for the day, that she will be spending more than a small amount of time in research with that phone.
Now, I suppose it would be rude for me not to introduce everyone. That is Hestia and Lucio and Miriam. This is Vittoria, my half-sister.
Pleasure to meet you. I didn't realize you had extended family.
I just want to say, like, nobody does family drama like the freaking Hakata. I swear.
We have 235 cousins within one generation. No one does family like the family.
Congratulations.
You know, the things that I kept hearing tossed around, especially when him, with Sophia and Wolchek were fighting, I could say something to that, but I'm not going to. I'm trying to keep it classy. You know? Anyway, so we're kind of tied in for now. Hold on, I just have to address one thing. And she looks at Miriam. You couldn't draw anything else? Like a field of freaking flowers? Or a vintage automobile? You had to draw a fucking heart and some lungs? Really?
It's in a hurry. It's what I know. I did a ton of this in med school.
But how do we make it fucking strong voodoo?
Meh? I'm going to guess it has to do something with that vortex chaos thing. I don't know.
I thought it was some sort of Germari thing. It is going to become very ignoring.
Yeah, I had nothing to do with that. I want to stake it and see what happens.
Miriam will frown. Honest, kind of like white noise. Once we go to sleep, we won't even notice it.
Yeah, but did you notice how freaked out our host got?
I'm not sure it was just the drawing.
Miriam, please get rid of it.
It is a bit unnerving, but I'm sure that it will eventually fade. Most things connected with those arts die during the day.
Miriam will frown at Lucio. You've already destroyed enough art for one lifetime.
Your art is beating.
Yeah, well, I didn't do that.
They are a bit dysfunctional. I'm sure you will be used to it in no time.
As you say. And with that, she begins climbing the stairwell, checking the door to make sure that either it can be locked or unlocked from this side. Leaving you all in the space with the heart still beating. It's funny, in the saddest definition of what funny is, the moment that Lucio mentioned destroying it, it began to beat faster. The moment that Miriam rose to defend it, it eased back into its normal rhythm.
That wasn't weird at all.
That's hella creepy. But I have other things that I need to share because I don't know how much of what happened earlier you all paid attention to. She looks at Lucio specifically. He's gone. Jay is gone. He traded his life for Vivi's. And Vivi is currently in the care of the Chantry. And she quotation marks care. Care of the Chantry. They haven't tested her blood yet, and we don't have a lot of time before they do, but it seems as if we pay them somehow that we would be able to get her back before they do so. And it would be in our best interest to do so, because if they test her blood, it doesn't matter what deals we've made with the Hecata, or what boons or things we owe. That means they can't touch us, because that means we would have broken a tradition while we were still technically citizens of Chicago, and then they could call the blood hunt, no matter what else is going on. So we need to get her back ASAP.
So, what do you think they would want?
DuSable is always a man of power and knowledge. He prefers power and knowledge. If we can find him something that he does not yet know or does not have access to power-wise, he might consider it enough to trade her for, because that's what they are using her for, experimentation to gain knowledge. I'm guessing they've never had a living or unliving Lasombra to poke and prod and figure out how they work. So that's what it is they're doing. And again, like I said, we don't have a lot of time before they get tired of attempting to keep her undead and start draining her.
I mentioned previously I knew, or I think I know, where the grimoire is that the Voivod of the North was looking for. If we were to make a copy of a few pages of it, do you think that knowledge would suffice for a trade?
It's possible, but I think we should also had that with something else just in case that's not enough. I don't know what else we could use. I mean, as is, we've already seen and heard a lot more than we should know with this whole she waves around the Milwaukee thing. I could only, I guess, seem to ask him what it is and possibly make a deal depending on what it is that he's going to ask for. But again, we should have at least a base offer So maybe the grimoire thing would be a yes, seeing as how, again, that would give him both power and knowledge. The other thing I was told is that we need to hunker down and raise our shields and walls because there will be attacks from all sides, especially seeing as how our favorite Don is now basically the Prince of Hell.
Fabulous. So
And has been spying on us with many, many minions.
So how do we tap into the shelter then? Because I presume that's what he meant.
That's true. The shelter, the energy there hasn't truly been attuned to, has it? Not in the same way that these other, what did you call them again? God machines have been.
So far, I've only been a guardian for the energies there, taking no power from myself, obviously, other than small boosts with spells here and there or wardings, but it might come a day where I have to do the thing I'm going to hate most.
You motherfuckers don't hate that. Y'all kill willy-nilly all goddamn time. What the fuck? Why don't you just go ahead and sacrifice one of the goddamn homeless people that's sitting there all waste of life? Doing right by nobody don't get you nothing but dead. Now you motherfuckers want to hang on, and I want to hang on a little bit longer too. I ain't who I used to be no more, but it don't mean that I'm stupid. And right now, y'all being stupid. Find somebody that nobody care about, which is a lot of them motherfuckers, and kill them. Kill them as many as you need to attune to the power. Make it for yourself, because that's what the fucker wanted anyway. Yo, daddy. And let's not talk about the step adoptive auntie mama. Both of them scheming on each other, perfectly matched, and you motherfuckers are fighting a battle that's really a war, and none of you all got the weapons or the willingness to survive long enough for them to not get the leg up. The fuck? This shit sucks. I used to be able to teleport from here to there and back as long as it was nighttime, and now I can't even leave your side. This is fucking ridiculous.
Okay, that is
great to be back.
Is there any way to attune without killing people? Because we've done enough of that.
Enough. Y'all put enough motherfuckers on that side of the void that y'all, if the whole legends was true about whoever you killed is gonna be your servant, y'all have your own army.
Maybe if we hold hands and wish hard enough, the rainbows will erupt from our stomachs.
Oh no, you don't do nothing with rainbows. That's them fairy shit.
With all the thin bloods we killed that one time, I'm amazed none of us were able to tune to it then.
Power demands power. There is no other way.
Thank you, Blue. Succinct as fucking always. Anyway.
If power demands power, then there's always ways to get power without killing people.
Don't y'all
Might
get
take
it?
Longer.
Y'all don't got that much time. They already got most of the souls in and around the fucking shelter bent to their will. Hell, look at those 5 already listening to us right now behind the wall. Y'all just running off at the mouth telling all y'all plans to everybody that was listening. Why do you think why do you think they knew so much about what you were doing?
I will just cross my arms and arch an eyebrow. Not all of us can see that shit.
It is shit, and it's worse because a lot of them people at the shelter, they just bathe willy nilly. Some of them don't have any personal grooming habits, and that shit's just fucking disgusting. And there ain't nothing you can do about it except for maybe steal their hair comb or maybe make them lose their deodorant or take a sock here and there. Normally, sometimes, at least up until recently, I could make them. Well, anyway. I guess I best get used to being around you motherfuckers again because this shit is fucking depressing. We gonna lose, we gonna die. They got better plans, they got more intentions. They're not afraid to do what's needed to be done. Hell, I guess we all gotta die for something.
Just out of idle curiosity, what do you know about their plans, since clearly you were privy to them? Or do we
Privy?
need to miss
Is that like pretty?
other things?
I thought a privy was a bathroom.
In some slang, yes.
I learn something new every day. I guess it really is a new day because I ain't learned shit in a very long time. So, and as he says, so, you all, each of you, can feel how close to sunrise it actually is. You can feel the coming of the day. You can feel, while the energies in the room are not amped up to the level they still were, as the volume of the beating heart and the inhaling lungs lessens, and as Blue's own semblance of life becomes less a semblance of life and the mockery that it actually is, you all know that death comes close. You all know that in fewer moments than you would like, you will cease to be. You will be at the disposal of any who care to dare your presence. In a few pressing moments, all that you are, all of your worries and concerns will blink from existence temporarily. And while the basement, as far as basements go, is relatively clean, minus all of the ritual paraphernalia from Sophia, minus all of the residual essences of what has taken place here. It is still a basement. It is still an earthen floor. It very much is still a basement where you are dying for the day. Plans aside for the next. It is still a basement, and you are still 2 hours from home. You are still on the cusp of greatness or the never-ending pit of failure. And there's nothing you in this moment can do about it, save listen to Blue regale you as to how many instances the Castigliones have shared with you vicariously from all of the spirits, souls, and entities in your presence at various times. How many moments have actually been witnessed, acted upon, reacted to that you all were not aware of? It's one thing knowing that you're followed. It's one thing being paranoid about what's out there. It's another having those moments detailed, itemized, and presented to you as if it was a report given by the most colorful use of the word motherfucker. And on that thought, and on that note, I'd like to thank you all for a lovely episode, and I'll see you guys next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.